1 week ago, we kicked off round 2, season 2, round 1 of the 2020 Hoosier Racing Tire SCCA eSports Super Tour. And what an evening it was. And if you're wondering what kind of evening was it, well, then you missed out, because it was intense. It was exciting. We had great battles up and down, and that action is going to continue tonight as we are going to be live from Road Atlanta for round 2 of season 2. And I'm live right now with our announce booth is full, completely full, with Greg Ginsberg, and we've got our guest tonight, JG Pasterjack from Grassroots Motorsports, and the three of us are going to socially distant, providing you all the action for tonight from Road Atlanta. And guys, this is going to be an intense night, because these drivers now know what to expect from what we saw in week 1, from what the competition's like, what the intensity's like. But now it's Road Atlanta, a track everybody loves. They've been practicing all week long. They've been working on the setups all week long. What do we think we're going to be seeing tonight, starting out with our first race here in the Formula 3s? Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, Larry, absolutely. And, we have, as you mentioned, 2 races tonight, actually, from Road Atlanta on the Hoosier Racing Tire SCCA eSports Super Tour. And last week here, we had a great battle for the win in F3 between Max King, who took the win, and Andrew Pilato with Evan Rackison as well. And I believe all 3 drivers are here tonight and have been very close. And I've been watching practice, JG, as things have transpired tonight, and we have at the moment 12 different cars all within 1 second of another right at the top of the field, almost 40 different cars, and it should be a great battle this evening.
Yeah, and I think that really speaks to the level of competition that we've been seeing in SCCA eSports for, gosh, the last 2 months now. I don't really think anybody knew what to expect when this started, and I think there were a lot of people who were watching this, maybe not taking virtual racing quite as seriously. But as we've seen over the weeks, there are cars running nose to tail for the entire 20-minute sessions, and you also have interesting things going on, especially at tracks like Road Atlanta, where some of the passing opportunities are very high risk in real life, where you would see things happen in real life and you think, my God, my friend's never going to walk again. Those risks are sort of removed in the virtual world, so you have people that are able to exploit some of these opportunities in a virtual space that they might not take in real life.
Yeah, and you take what both of you guys are saying, where you've got the close risk opportunities that might be taken, and then you've got that, as Greg mentioned, this close, everybody's within 1 second at the front, which we didn't necessarily have at VIR last week. Last week, you had the group at the front, really, with Paul Darling, was seen to be checking out from his pole position, and Max King stuck with him for a while, and then once, there was an incident there, and Paul was the car was damaged, Max kind of was able to kind of coast to the end. This week, so far here through the practice session, doesn't look that way. Are we looking at setting up a situation here where there's going to be plenty of opportunities for those high-risk passes as the field looks pretty close?
Yes, Larry, and especially as we look at this group here with the Formula 3 cars, to see all of these drivers so close to one another, knowing that they have so many different variables, much like a real-life race car, that they can play with to determine, and really base whether or not the car has ultimate top-end speed or has better handling and more downforce through some of the slower sections here at Road Atlanta. To find all these drivers very, very close, what you may find is that they will be taking some of those chances, knowing that they don't have a real car on the line here. Places where you'd see very late braking, normally in real life, for example, going down into turn 10A here at the end of the very long back straight at Road Atlanta, as we're watching that on the screen right now, or perhaps coming out of turn 1. You may also see some moves going into turn number 7, which is really the slowest corner, JG, as you know, but vitally important here at Road Atlanta, because it's basically what will determine your ultimate speed at the end of that long back straight.
Well, sure, and the character of Road Atlanta is very interesting. I'm actually old enough to have raced on the old Road Atlanta configuration where there was no turn 10 and 11 where you went screaming straight through a dip right up the hill. And, it was, wow, that was thrilling. I'm certainly not going to be nostalgic enough to say that they didn't maybe actually make it a better racetrack by adding some character there. But I think the cool thing about Road Atlanta is that there are different passing opportunities you can take at different times based on what you want to accomplish. For example, you can make a pass going into turn 10 and hold that pass to the start finish line, which is while you're still exiting turn 12, but you might commit to that pass across start finish line but not be able to hold it to turn 1. So that might be a pass you only want to try on the final lap of a race, and you might want to actually put yourself in position. It's one of the few tracks that you'll see that maybe there are strategic times to not make a pass in a certain area because you know the potential of getting repassed is so high.
Exactly, and we've seen that, Larry, at many, many different racetracks where you don't necessarily want to be in the lead on the very last lap because you may get passed, but and we've seen a couple of the drivers actually hold off on making passes, say with 2 or maybe even 3 laps to go, because they have that concern that they may not be able to make the pass back towards the end of the race if they do get passed. So definitely a lot of strategy here is going to play into how these racers approach this. And speaking about strategy, of course, the format here on the Esports Super Tour, we see the drivers, they're finishing up their practice session right now, and it's a 70-minute practice session that they're on. Then they're going to have a 15-minute qualifying session, and as opposed to right now where all these drivers are out on track, it's open track, they're all together. When they go to qualifying, we'll be able to watch each and every one of these cars, but the drivers, what they will see is their own private Road Atlanta. They will be on the track by themselves trying to set fast laps. They will have 4 opportunities, 4 laps around Road Atlanta to set the best time to start to set the grid for what will be a 20-minute race.
Yeah, and I think that's, if you missed last week, that's something we had just kind of touched on. We kind of got to see a little bit of how that works, but that's a big change for the Hoosier Super Tour here in the esports side that we didn't do in Season 1 that we've enacted here in Season 2, which is that single car qualifying. And it gives everyone a chance with the 4 laps to hopefully get enough heat in the tires, but it's a clean look at the track. It means also that you're not going to get a chance to have a draft buddy. You're not going to have anyone that you're going to be able to gauge off of. You're really out there on your own, but it's a clean, completely solo lap, theoretically putting the fastest outright speed at the front of the field. But I think we need to talk, when you get to the Miatas, it's going to be maybe a different way that race is played out because those cars are less variables and a lot more tight, close spec type racing. But here in the F3s, with the variability in the setups, someone might have the same lap times, but a track like Road Atlanta with that long back straight, what kind of, when we get to racing, all of a sudden someone's running a lot less downforce than the next guy. What do you think that's going to play out for those first couple laps as things shake out when everyone's running different setups?
Well, I think what you're probably going to see is folks going to a specific qualifying setup in this case, because they're not going to be running in traffic. They're going to have a very specific temperature window to hit on those tires. And the Miata race, I think, is going to be especially interesting because they've now gone to a new tire model with the latest patch. But I think with the variability in setups of these F3 cars, I think you're going to see again, you're going to see a lot of people taking that risk reward, going for a very aggressive qualifying setup that maybe gets dialed back a little bit for the race where they can work traffic a little bit more accurately.
Yeah, I think that'll be an interesting thing to see if anybody actually does that. A little bit of testing I've done with these cars, what I found is that the more downforce you crank in, the faster your lap times get, which then leads to what you're saying is, but when you get into traffic, you don't necessarily want that because you're going to get beat down that straightaway with a person with a little less downforce. But when you're in the twisties, a little less downforce, you can often hold someone behind you a little bit because you can't pass. So we'll see if anybody tries that strategy with the race. But look at these lap times. We've already got Patrie and King, your top 2 so far in practice, in the 13s. Are they on a high downforce? Or are they working on a common setup between race and practice? So we've got just a couple of seconds here left here in this practice. Again, as Greg mentioned, it was a 70-minute practice that they've been in for. A lot of the drivers have been using a lot of this. I've seen the track's been pretty busy. The qualifying session, as Greg mentioned, it's going to be 15 minutes or 4 laps. Track like Rhode Island. Everyone should be able to get plenty of time to get their 4 laps in. Then we will grid up for a rolling start in our 20-minute race. We've hinted at it a little bit. We will then have the same situation for our MX-5 Cup cars. The only difference there is the higher demand for the Cup cars. We are going to be having a bit more of a tournament play-in. There's a qualifying round that'll be going on here shortly. So those drivers have to first qualify to get in, and then they will do their 70 minutes and so forth and so on. And I know, JJ, you had to participate in that last week to get in. So I'm going to ask you, having run those Miatas a week ago in those races, what was that experience like for you coming into this and going through that first round of, hey, I got to make sure I make it to those top 55, and then getting into the race and kind of having to do it all over again to qualify? Is there a bit of extra stress layer put on you?
Oh, it's absolutely nerve-wracking, and I think that is the thing that. So there was a comment earlier in the Facebook feed, and hi to everybody watching on Facebook tonight. I'll swap over to YouTube after a while and see if there's any comments there. But somebody mentioned, it's dark outside right now, but it's sunny in the live video. How does that work? And it works because this is a simulation, but because this simulation is so real, especially I run with a virtual reality headset on. You're extremely immersed and you become extremely emotionally invested in what's going on, and the nerves, the emotion, the stress is very, very real when you're watching those times come in. In fact, on some levels, it's even more stressful because you have more access to information as a driver in the sim. You can pull up other people's lap times in real time. You can cycle through and see what everybody's doing. You're not there's a lot of distractions to drive yourself crazy with, and you really have to sort of think about, well, here's what's happening in this qualifying, here's where I am in this qualifying, but what are the people in the other qualifying doing right now? So yeah, it's definitely very nerve-wracking, and then there's a profound sense of relief when you get to the actual qualifying period. You make that cut for the final, and then of course in my case I completely hosed up the qualifying period, but which was fine because I hosed up the race too. So it was nice bookends there for me.
Well, we always look for consistency when we're on.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think that's the thing for somebody that if you've not tried sim racing before, even if you've just not tried watching sim racing before, the emotions you feel doing this and the intensity that you feel are really 100% relatable to somebody who's been on a real track. The only difference is when you crash, it does not hurt as bad, either your body or your pocketbook, and then when you in my case, when you crash and you take off that virtual reality goggles and look around and go, oh, it's just me in my garage in my underwear. There's a bit of a comeback to reality there, but what's going on track is extremely real. And if you've not had a chance to give sim racing a try, just hit one of those Tuesday night fun with cars events, and that is a great way to jump in.
It's very real for your neighbors too when you leave the garage door open and you're in there with your underwear on running your sim.
They've seen worse.
That I probably definitely don't want to know about. Yeah. But as actually JG just mentioned, we do have sessions during the week, both on Tuesday nights and I believe Saturday nights now, what we call Fun with Cars sessions. If you go to the SCCA members Facebook page, let me rephrase that, the SCCA official members, or is it members official Facebook page? There are two different Facebook pages, but we do go and announce those sessions. They are open to everybody. You don't even need to be an SCCA member so that you can actually go and join in. But recently I've just now gotten back into, now that I've upgraded some equipment, gotten back into virtual racing. I had taken a first stab at it about 10 years ago, and I told Larry the other day I was doing some testing, so it was just myself, no other drivers, out at Laguna Seca, and I found myself, I was gritting my teeth. I could actually feel myself tensing up going through the corkscrew. I actually had to put a fan on my face because I found myself getting car sick. And no, I don't use virtual reality goggles. I have a monitor right in front of me. But most of my friends know that when I go and I race, when I'm behind the steering wheel of a real car, I don't have car sickness problems. But when I'm in the passenger seat, if I was instructing on track with students or sometimes family and friends in a regular car out on the street, I will get car sick unless I have a lot of wind blowing at me and a lot of cool air. And I found myself experiencing some of those same issues. I've never gotten car sick except when I drove the Dragon a number of years ago. But doing the iRacing, I'm getting so into it and starting to feel so many of the different inputs that you get in a real race car. It's almost the exact same thing.
Between JG's anxiety and your car sickness, I don't know if you guys are really selling the whole point of sim racing here, but
yeah, maybe not.
Yeah, Greg, I think we need to team up for an enduro here before too long. We'll be
as long as our sim rigs aren't side by side, I think it'll be okay.
Right, so
and that's not because JG's in his underwear.
We'll be jitters and pukes. We can.
Let's get to qualifying here.
All right.
And I'm seeing a lot of drivers have got about 2 laps in. Leaderboard right now is your Race 1 winner, Max King, right now has your top time, currently sitting at a 14.2. Looks like he's about to finish what I believe is his 3rd lap, and still sitting on just a little quicker 14.2 for him. I believe he's about to start his, what should be his 4th lap, and I can actually confirm that. Currently 2nd on the leaderboard is Paul Darling, who actually was your pole sitter, and Max just spun, so he's not going to be able to improve any further. And so Paul Darling currently 2nd. He was your pole sitter in week 1 at VIR last week. These guys were sitting, I think, Paul was at a 14.1 in practice, so he could go a little quicker if he could match that. Another driver to watch for is going to be Caleb Patrie. Caleb did a 13.9 in practice, currently sitting at a 14.2 here so far in qualifying. So we're going to keep our eye on him as well. Another one up on the leaderboard right now is Kyle Herbst. Herbst at a 14.2 right now. There you can see Kyle currently at a 14.2. He was at a 14, just under a 14.1, a 14.099 in practice. So again, if he's going to match his previous practice best, he's still got about 0.2 to pick up. Andrew Pilata currently 5th. Evan Rackison currently in 6th. Jake King, Max's brother, currently in 7th. Jackson McLeod in 8th right now, sitting at a 14.6. So again, you're looking at about 0.5 covering the top 8 now. So that's a very tight grouping, as we were mentioning there earlier, just from practice, where the top 10 or 12 were about 1 second apart. Right now, the top 8 covered by about a half a second.
And I think what you're seeing too, Larry, is you're seeing the fastest cars in practice going just a little bit faster than the top group here in qualifying, which we can make some assumptions there that maybe these cars do run a little bit better in traffic with a bit of a draft, or maybe they run a little bit faster, more than 4 laps in once they get a little bit of additional heat in the tires. So it'll be interesting seeing, around minutes 7, 8 to 10, how things start shaping up. If there's a group of cars still competing for the lead, how competitive is that group going to get at that point?
Paul Darling just took the top spot on our provisional qualifying leaderboard at I was going to say at a 14.1, but he just clicked off a 13.9, the first driver into the 13s here in qualifying. So up on top, provisional pole right now belonging to Paul Darling, who had pole last week, but it is not over yet. It's over for him. That was his 4th lap. But as we keep our eyes,
yeah, and that was very close to what he ran in practice. He ran a 14.1 in practice. Fastest driver in practice was Max King with a 1:13.84. But as you mentioned, with him crashing out on his last lap, he's not going to be able to improve on that. He's currently sitting 2nd, and provisionally, if things were to end right now, would start on the front row.
Yeah, and I'm keeping an eye also. I'm looking at Caleb Patrie was 2nd quickest in practice. Looks like he is done. He's only completed 3, but it looks like he is parked in grid, so he's not going to get another lap, I don't believe. Also out there, I'm looking down the list. There's Max Growl,
Yeah, and let's mention as Max Growl now is heading out on track, and I believe he is sitting 10th in the order right now. And this is actually a very good time to mention him, Larry. Of course, Max is the proprietor of Competition One Motorsports, and as we've been talking about, one of the big changes for Season 2 on the Esports Super Tour, big changes, big prizes, and Competition One is offering up a prize to the winner of this particular season in the F3 series, and they are going to be offering up an arrive and drive package for an SCCA driver's school at Blackhawk Farms Raceway later this year. Now, Competition One, they are they are with the Central U.S. parts dealer for Formula Enterprises. They offer frame-up rebuilds, chassis alignments, tire services, you name it, and they have provided the winning car for the last 2 years, the national championship winning car in the Formula Enterprises 2 class. Flynn Lazier winning in 2018, Rhett Barkow in 2019. So they definitely that's a pretty good. That is a very timely.
Director loving the new telestrator function.
Yeah, and Max Growl parking his car in the perfect spot just for an advertisement. So again, Max Growl is the proprietor from Competition One. We definitely want to thank them. They're out of Scales Mound, Illinois, and if you want to look them up for services, if you go to competition1racing.com, they can fulfill all of your Formula Enterprises needs and a lot of other services as well. You can also call them at 815-596-3009.
So the other thing about this format of qualifying, although you are limited to laps that count is to maximum of 4, you can keep running more laps, which gives you a chance to get more practice in if you're looking for that. Darren Drinkle's going to probably get himself a replacement car.
Yeah, he may need it now. And Darren, I don't know how long he's been running Formula cars in the esports world. We saw him win a race in one of the TCR Audis during the first season of the Esports Super Tour. So this may be a little change for him. He is an STL driver, Super Touring Light driver, Honda Civic driver. Finished, I believe, 3rd at the runoffs at Daytona back in, I guess it was 2015.
And yeah, that's certainly something to mention, that the skills really do translate over very, very well from the modern version of Sims to the real world. If you look at the list of folks we've got on in the top 10, even top 15 or 20 right now, you see runoffs champions, you see autocross champions. There's very few people up there who are not very, very fast in the real world as well. I actually, of course, all in the name of journalism, but took an iRacing driving school. Did some private coaching earlier this week, and it was very enlightening. I was talking to a kid in Spain who had never. We actually did it at Road Atlanta, and he had never driven Road Atlanta in real life. And I've been around that hundreds, maybe if not thousands of laps, and he was telling me things about it. I sort of purposely picked a track that I knew very well, and he was telling me things about it that he shouldn't know unless he's been there. So if you're wondering if this translates over into real life skills, 100%.
Yeah, and for those of you that were asking earlier about the weather, and and of course we've been talking about how lifelike it feels when you're behind the wheel racing here. Most of these racetracks that you're going to see on the Esports Super Tour have actually been laser scanned by the service that we're using, iRacing, and they are incredibly accurate, at least to the time when the scan was done. So Road Atlanta, it was a couple of years ago when this was done, but that means certain little bumps in the pavement translate into feeling bumps in the car and having the car shift around underneath you, grip levels, how tall the curb curbing is. You can see actually as you look here is we have a driver going off into turn 6 right now. You'll see off on the sides maybe some of that red Georgia clay and maybe some dirt popping up through the grass, and that is indicative of where the cars in real life would drive off and drive over the, go off, run off a little bit, and so you end up with what is in virtual reality very much like reality at Road Atlanta and all the other tracks that we run on here on the virtual eSports Super Tour.
Well, it's so it's so realistic, in fact, that iRacing has gone so far as to provide a single keybind to replicate the SCCA experience. You can hit one key and complain about the rules. So that's how closely this approximates real life.
All right, so we've got about a minute here left. Why don't we do a quick review of the track map? JG, since you've been there, probably put more laps in than the rest of us, give me a quick roundy round of your experience here at Road Atlanta.
Okay, so let's start off with turn 1. Turn 1 is uphill and has some positive camber, so you're going to be getting some compression in the car, which is going to help at your turn in. It's takes a very specific foot on the brake pedal to negotiate. It's a much faster corner and very visually interesting. Top of turn 1, you go into turn 2, which is a quick juke to the left. Visually very difficult to put yourself in the right spot to brake and line up for turn 3, which is cresting the hill on the, I guess that would be the south side of the track there. You can take a lot of curb at turn 3. It's going to be interesting to see how aggressive the drivers get on the curbs there, because there are penalties in iRacing for going too far off the track. From there, you head down through turn 4 and then into the S's, which comprise the lead up to turn 5. The S's basically are all a ploy to set you up for a proper turn 5. The real critical part of this track, in my opinion, is the turn 5 through turn 7 area, because you can get suboptimal exits from turn 5 and a suboptimal route through turn 6 as long as you maximize turn 7. If you can hold position and get a good exit from turn 7, you are in pretty good shape. So watch for drivers specifically setting up to take a line out of turn 7 that they want to use down the back straight. Back straight has a couple of kinks in it. You're going to see drivers moving to both sides of the road to sort of minimize the distance they travel down the back straight, and braking for those turns 10A and 10B at the bottom of the hill. Great passing opportunity, but as we talked about earlier, can sometimes be difficult to make those passes stick all the way to turn 1. You can make them stick to the start finish line, which is right at the bottom of the very scary downhill turn 12. But sometimes making those stick all the way to turn 1 is tough. So you have to choose your timing very correctly going for a pass in turn 10.
Yeah, I completely agree that turn 7 is so crucial at this place because that long straightaway, and but some passing zones for sure. All right, so qualifying is complete. Let's do a quick rundown of where we've got on the grid. At least give you the first couple rows. On our pole position for the second week in a row, Paul Darling, the only driver in qualifying to crack into the 13s with a 13.9. On the outside was our race 1 winner, Max King. So these two are paired up again on our front row. Second row will be made up by Caleb Patrie, who was our Fun with Cars winner on Tuesday night in these cars. So the front 3 definitely worth contending with. And Andrew Pilata, another one who's been very fast. He's going to be on the outside of row 2. Row 3, we're going to have Evan Rackison, and on the outside of row 3, Kyle Herbst. Row 4, Chris DeShong. Alongside him will be Jake King, Max King's brother. So the Kings there setting up on the front 4 rows. Definitely going to be a family to battle there. On row 5, you got Jackson McLeod on the inside. On the outside, we talked about him about competition 1. Max Growl there coming in on row 5. And that top 5 rows separated by 0.7 of a second. Going to be very, very intense. We got a short run to this turn 1. Guys, keys to the race, what do we think? Survive turn 1 and turn 3?
Certainly at the start, yes. And I think, again, I kind of mentioned at one point, getting good runs, getting a good dig out of turn 7, which is the slowest corner on the course here, will give the opportunity to stay in the draft down the long straight, set yourselves up for a pass going down into the very heavy, and probably the one of only 2 very heavy braking corners here at Road Atlanta, and that is turn 10A at the very end of that long straightaway.
That's right. Yeah, I forgot the way they line these things up here. We did the same thing on Tuesday night during the Fun with Cars. They grid the cars just before the chicane at the end of the back straight. The safety car is not there. You come down the hill, it's like, what's going on? And then you pick the safety car up coming out of pit exit, and then you get a complete lap. So,
all right, Larry. Well, while we've got the cars here going on that pace lap, let's very quickly talk about another one of our sponsors before we get to the green flag, and that is Sunoco, the official fuel of the SCCA, and that for 125 years, Sunoco has been fueling victories on and off the track, and that is why Sunoco has trusted the fuel over 50 series of racing, driving, and winning, including the SCCA National Championship runoffs, SCCA Pro Racing, NHRA, and NASCAR. To find race gas near you, visit www.racegas.com or call Sunoco at 1-800-RACE-GAS.
all right, so here we are. We see them coming along to that back straight. We've got a big field. I think this is a lot bigger field than we had last week. We're looking at about 45 cars.
Yeah, we've got about 45 cars, I believe, that have taken the grid here, Larry. So it should be very exciting, and hopefully, when they start off here, well, we may not get to the start because we've got a huge mix-up here coming down the back straight. We've got a number of cars that have gotten into one another coming out of turn 7, and I was just watching the field. Probably lost about 6 cars, and a lot of them are going to be on the pit lane for the start of this race. There you go. You can see here.
Oh, let's see if we get a couple names of those drivers. That's unfortunate. I'm seeing the 37 car, Grand Vogel.
Yeah, we've got the 37, the 60 car.
All right, so we're going to go to green at the front, but at the front, we talked about it on the front row, Paul Darling and Max King. They're going to go side by side through one with Caleb Patrie on the outside. It looks like it's going to be Darling taking the lead up through 1 into 2, and they have sorted it out. At least the front 8 or 9 have, but that middle pack.
Well, I have to see here. It looked like, Larry, let me jump in here because we saw a car coming up the inside going into turn 3, and I believe it may have been the number 47 car, but 2 cars got together going, that's John Weschler, who I know very well, normally drives a Spec Miata. They had gotten together right at the top of the S's. It caused a little mayhem there, so we've got now, I think, probably our first 10 cars to 15 cars that have separated themselves out from the rest of the pack.
Yeah. And something happened there to Kyle Herbst. He had actually qualified up in 6th. That was his car we just saw there on the side of the track, and he's out of the race. He's done. All right, so our leaders are these two battled all last week until they had just the lightest bit of contact. We call it net code, not my favorite word, but that's what they call it. But I suspect they're going to continue this battling. That would be King and Darling, and right behind them, Patrie, Pilata, Rackison. That 3-way battle is going to continue. Let's see how they come down in the front straight, and they're going to go right at it. Is Darling going to try and get a draft on King? See if they've got any kind of bravery through 1. It's a tough place to pass.
And they've got a bit of a lead on the pack now, Larry, but that much battling is going to bring that pack right back to them. They need to figure out some kind of a strategy to pull themselves away from the pack if they're going to be trying to pass and repass every corner like that.
Yeah, and as they're making their way down through the S's here at Road Atlanta, already starting to see Paul Darling, and of course it's early in the race and the tires have not come up to temperature yet, but the rear end of Paul Darling's car skating around just a little bit. Max King's car looked a little bit more stable in the corner, so we'll see here as they come out of turn 7 if we have a little bit more straight line speed from Paul Darling. That I think much like last week at Virginia International Raceway, and talking to Max King after the race had concluded, Max had definitely set the car up at VIR for some of the slower sections, like the uphill S's, also through the turns 3 through 5 area there as well. And we may be seeing that again here, but on the straightaway, JG, doesn't look like Darling was able to even get up even with Max King.
Well, and he's definitely showing his nose there. I think a lot of what you're seeing right now is drivers figuring out what they can accomplish, drivers taking shots that they might not want to actually complete, showing themselves in mirrors of other drivers, and just sort of establishing a little bit of dominance and figuring out where they might have an advantage, either from their setup or just from what they're maybe feeling they're doing well this particular night, because they've let's see, Darling and King have sort of maintained that 1.1, 1.3 second lead, but they're both clearly faster than the rest of the pack, but not able to stretch out much of a lead from the pack right now because they are hammering on each other so hard.
Yeah,
they are. Patrie is definitely keeping it close, but you probably noticed a moment ago that Evan Rackison had a big spin, looked like going into the chicane at the end of the back straight. Didn't look like made any contact. At the end of it, was able to continue, but definitely lost a lot of position there. He was running up in the top 5 there.
He was in the top 5. He's fallen all the way down to 18th now in the number 46 car. And remember, Rackison finished on the podium last week at Virginia International Raceway. Look at this. We've got the battle going on again with our leaders.
What, flour the table, Grandma, because these guys are throwing biscuits already. Lap 2, and we've had 4 moves for the lead and now a real pass for the lead. And actually, Darling appears to be putting a little bit of a gap on now second place King.
Yeah, you mentioned, Craig, about the setup differences last week that Max talked about he had the higher downforce, couldn't keep up with Darling in the straightaway. I'm almost wondering if they're opposite this week.
Yeah, I mean, possibly. Again, early on that first lap, it looked like Darling was having some issues keeping the car underneath him. But again, much like a real race car, these drivers do see where the tires, they may be cold until they start to get some heat in them and the tire pressures rise up. Much like a real race car, they have a lot less ultimate grip there, and it can take 2 or 3 laps until these cars are at an advantage. Now, of course, with these race cars here, these Formula 3 cars, of course, they've got the wings on them, they've got the side pods, they've got a lot of aero downforce to them. When we see the Global MX5 Cup cars run a little bit later, that will be a little bit more critical for them.
There's Evan Slater. We just saw spinning. He was running up into 11th, I think, right at the time he spun, and that's just coming out of the turn 7 hairpin there. Very easy spot to do it. You just get on the gas just a little bit too early, and this is what happens. It's very easy to do. Oh, and Abbott did as well, and Abbott was running about the same, very, very similar thing. He was running, I think, in 14th, just a couple spots behind him, so very easy to do right there if you get on the gas just a bit too early.
And these guys, side by side through turn 1 is not something that is not a long-term recipe for sustainability if you're talking about even a 20-minute race. So this is something's got to give here with Darling and King here sooner or later.
You think their memories are short? Because I recall last week it was the upper S's at VIR where they actually made contact, and one of them didn't survive the race because they were side by side in a place where everybody said you don't go side by side. The upper S's at VIR.
And I think that's something that you're going to see in a virtual space that you might not necessarily see, maybe at an event like the runoffs or an actual SCCA Super Tour on the last lap. You might see a fantastically high risk maneuver like that, but lap after lap to see these guys pass and repass each other. So yeah, great setup going into turn 10 here, but this is one of those passes that it's difficult to make stick all the way down the front straight sometime. We're going to see if Darling can hold on to it.
Yeah, but you'll notice now as they've been battling, Caleb Patrie and Andrew Pilata have moved right into contention here for the lead. They're only about a car length or so off of our second place runner Max King, and that last time by, the fastest driver of the 4 was Caleb Patrie in the number 98 car, ran a 1:14.8. That was almost 0.6 of a second faster than Max King, and more than a half a second faster than Paul Darling as well. So that battle between the two, our two leaders, has really put them in peril here.
Yeah, one of the things about trying to drive this car this week and running the Tuesday race, and my son was kind of throwing me his setup and asking me to try it and things. This car, it gets faster with each lap up until about lap 6, where it really kind of hits a sweet spot for a lap or two. And guess what lap we're on right now, which is lap 6. So I'm wondering if this is where Patrie's setup has just finally hit that spot, and now he's going to try and make this move on King.
And we're also going to run into some back markers here before too long. I'm looking at the timing. How long do we have before we start hitting the back of the field? Because that's going to definitely affect how these guys can battle with each other.
Well, one of the things we've done, because we're not allowing any more fast repairs, is a lot of those early incidents, no one's rejoining at least, so it's got to take a pretty much slower. If I look down the field, we do have somebody that's about a minute behind, so running at about minute 14, we could see next lap, so we could see some lap traffic or two, but it shouldn't be too bad. But what I'm seeing at the front now is Patrie is just a man on a mission to try and catch Darling. He's flying.
Yeah, Darling has stretched out a little bit of a lead, but there's essentially a blanket over 2, 3, and 4 with King, Patrie, and Pallotta all within. It's going back and forth, but essentially a tenth. One juke of the wheel of each other, and that's going to be a battle that is going to be shaping up here. Because even the third and fourth place guys, Patrie and Pallotta, they are making moves on each other going down the backstretch even as we speak.
Yep.
Yeah. Ooh, and they get very close. You can see how close they're getting as they come down the hill here and set up. And I'll tell you, the one thing though you can see here is how much of an effect the draft has on these drivers. And we have a driver that's gone off now. That is Jay King. That is Max's younger brother, and also during season 1 finished on the podium in a couple of different races, a couple different classes. But unfortunately, he's not having the luck of his brother right now.
Yep, you see just get a little bit too wide coming out of those chicane there. Got just a little bit too much grass on the left there. Caused a spin. Didn't look like he made any contact, but he did have to be a little patient. Rejoining and lost a lot of track position. Looks like he was running just around that top 10. Unfortunately, it's going to drop him back.
Yeah, and as you know, JG, some of the curbing here at Road Atlanta is safe to run over in a touring car, in a closed-top car. Most of the curbing is going to be very difficult in a Formula car, but the exit of turn 10B, starting to head up the hill towards the bridge towards the very end of a lap at Road Atlanta, is some of the most bone-jarring curbing that I think you'll find anywhere in the United States. That it really has the opportunity to really move a car around.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that you can get away with it until you can't. You can go to 99% of that curbing, but if you try and go to 99.2%, you might not be lucky. The one advantage that the virtual space does give you is that curbing and the dirt outside it does not change as much during a race as it might in real life when a chuck hole might develop or some dirt might get thrown up. There are models for that happening, but it never seems to be as aggressive in a virtual space. So if you're someone who's aggressive on the curbs, you have an aggressive set up to handle those curbs, that's usually something you'll be able to get away with for most of the race.
Now talk about aggressive. We're following Mackay Stevens right now in the number 16 car. So far he's got up for the hard charger. He's battling for third right now with Caleb Patrie as they head through turn 6 going into turn number 7. And so a great run for him, but that's also allowed Darling and King to move away and kind of escape the clutches of Patrie, at least temporarily. You can see
I can tell you a bit of the story of what I can see and what may have happened to Mackay is he had a decent practice in qualifying, had a very slow lap 1. Looks like he may have had issues on 2 of his laps, tires off or incidents, whatever, and had to just get a decent lap in. So did not get the qualifying that he wanted. And I think you're seeing now he's kind of that hard charger. He had started the race back in 13th, all the way up to 4th now. So he's definitely on the move. He wants every piece of Patrie here. He wants to get up into that podium spot.
And King and Darling have pulled out quite a bit of a lead as they go through turn 1 right now. They appear to be fairly checked out, although they are still battling with each other, and they could bring that field back to them very quickly. But yeah, Pallotta and Patrie have their own hands full now with Stevens getting up in that third place battle.
Yeah, this King Darling battle is amazing. It is like we are sitting here exactly 1 week ago. Things have not changed a bit between these two. This is exactly how they were at VAR. This is just amazing. And unfortunately, that ended up in one of those what they call neck code. If you're not familiar, it's basically the latency delays and things that happen. 2 cars make an incident, even though neither driver actually saw the interference. Hoping none of that happens tonight because these drivers are very, very clean racing right now. This is beautifully clean racing, and I hope it continues. This is just awesome to see. And now we've got to pass on the back straight between Stevens trying to make the move on Patrie. Can he make it stick?
Yeah, but he's also to the outside. It's going to be very difficult for him to make the move. But there he goes. Yeah. Just couldn't turn in. He's going to end up losing a couple positions there as they make their way back up the hill. But it was going to be a very difficult move for him on the outside. That
dear.
We're going to have to get a replay on this. Yeah. I suspect we will. Give us a second.
All right. Oh, and they get together.
They're both.
Yeah, well, it looks like they came up on some slower traffic here towards the end of the lap. Let's see what happens here. Oh, yeah, looks like a driver had come to almost a complete stop under the bridge, and when you come up that hill, I mean, there's just no way to sight it. It's a very steep rise up to go under the bridge, a very steep rise to go down, and so we lose Max King, and we also lose Paul Darling, it looks like, as well.
Oh, it's unfortunate. Those guys were having such a great race and such speed and such close racing. It's just terrible. All right, so we are going to continue now. So the new leader is Caleb Patrie with Pilata, DeShong, and Mackay Stevens. Now all four of them separated by 1.3 seconds. So the racing is not ended. We've got a great race at the front as our director's trying to see who that other car was, but it's okay. We will go to the lead. Right now it's Patrie with 6 minutes to go.
It might be best that we don't know who that was long term,
or that King and Darling don't know who it is.
Yeah.
All right, so let's look at the battle here because it's still pretty darn tight up for the lead right now with Pilata and Patrie, and looks like Stevens and now Chris DeShong in the number 41 car out of the Central Florida region, also running a very tight race here right behind our leaders.
Yeah, they are, and I suspect that DeShong's been a pretty quick mover in this as well. Started 7th, currently 4th. Nick Hems as well, if you look at him, currently in 5th. He had started this race back in 11th. So there's been a couple of folks that have really made some moves, and I think Mackay Stevens, though, has got to be the hard charger all the way from 13th, currently sitting provisionally on a podium spot here all the way in the 3rd. And you look at the way he's going right now, this is anybody's race in this top 3 or even top 4 with DeShong right in the mix.
Well, we'll have to see here, JG, as we'll keep tracking. We don't see any other backmarker cars ahead of our leaders right now as they go into turn 10A. But right before we saw that wreck with our former leaders, I was going to mention, I think one of the reasons why both Darling and King were able to separate themselves from the trio of Patrie, Pilata, and Stevens now 1 lap ago was that some backmarker traffic actually was encountered at a very inopportune time. But now, as we said, not a problem, at least for our leaders, and this is a great battle going into turn 3.
Besides, do 3. Oh, and a touch.
Oh, and there goes Mackay.
Stevens, yep. Unfortunately for Mackay, that's going to end his race. As they were nice and tight battle, though, but he actually was the trailing car here, and he looks like he just catches a bit too much curb and couldn't quite stay on that inside and ends it in the tire barrier through 3. Tough place.
Yeah, tough.
And Andrew Pilata's got to be thankful that didn't upset his car at all. He kind of got away with one there, and he's now within a couple of tenths of Caleb Patrie. But Chris DeShong is ready for those guys to screw something up behind him. He looks. I've been watching Chris drive a little bit, and he's not been making a lot of aggressive moves. He's been watching attrition happen in front of him, which is something you can do in these races sometimes. There are a lot of rewards for patience, and there's a lot of frustration that can come with patience as well. But in high-risk, short races like this, you can sit back and you can wait for everybody else to hand you the lead.
Yep, so we think we've got about 3 laps to go. Timer's just 3.5 minutes. It looks like it's 3 laps. Pilata, Patrie, DeShong, your top 3 with Hems and Jackson McLeod, your 4 and 5 runners currently, and that's a pretty tight battle as well. So the top 3 separated by less than a second. 4th and 5th separated nose and tail. This is going to be interesting. We've seen incidents already. We've seen all things happening. Who knows? Evan Rackison, who last week was up into, we said that he was up in the top 5 last week, currently 6th, so he's certainly one to keep an eye on as well in this battle.
All right, guys, we want to take a look here. I think Chris DeShong managed to get around Caleb Patrie coming out of turn 5 as they came down the S's. Patrie, who had been looking a little loose for the last quarter of a lap or so, just did not get a good exit out of turn 3. DeShong was able to get him coming down the hill. It was one of those somewhat high-risk maneuvers, as we now see Jay King also having some issues, but DeShong quietly making his way up, but it looks like Patrie's made his way back by going into 10A.
It goes back to what we talked about earlier, that even with these cars, being in that position on the last lap, maybe you don't want to have that lead if you're for whatever position you're fighting for. Maybe you want to be the trailing car because it doesn't look like anybody's really able to hold off down that back straight unless you've got maybe 8, 9 tenths. If you're less than that, you should be able to make that pass on that back straight, as we just saw Patrie able to get by DeShong there.
And in the meantime, this battle has allowed Andrew Pilata to basically check out. He's up over 3 seconds on the following battle. So all he's got to do is hold on for about another lap and a half, and he is cruising to a victory this week.
I know, your first time in the booth. Let's not go giving the announcers jinx quite yet.
Ooh, and there we go. Guys, have you noticed there? We've got big issues right now. Caleb Patrie, the number 98 car, ended up impacting a back marker car coming out of turn 6. DeShong was able to just avoid it. We're looking at some replays of it here right now, and he was just around the corner. You couldn't really see where he was spinning, and so that now takes Patrie out of the race, moves Nick Hems up to, I believe, will move him up to 4th.
Well, in the world of iRacing, in the world of sim racing, sometimes things you see don't actually happen. And the magic is, it looked like an incident, maybe it really wasn't, and Patrie's car is fine.
Well, you know, for safety reasons, they use those tethers, JG, to keep the wheels from separating too far from the car and bouncing into the driver behind them. And maybe Patrie honestly pulled the ripcord.
This is the same but the opposite thing we saw last week, where Paul Darling and Max King touched and went opposite ways, but we never saw contact. This is the exact opposite. It looked like major contact, but they never actually touched. All right, so it looks like we are going to be getting our white flag next time Pilata comes by.
Actually, I think we're on the last lap right now.
We are on the last lap. So with Pilata 3.5 seconds, he just has to avoid the back marker traffic at this point to make sure he stays clean, and that might be easier said than done. But behind him, it's anything could be done with Patrie DeShong still battling it out. Pilata going to take the conservative route here, as he's kind of wise to do. Patrie DeShong, though, they are going to continue to battle behind them. But it looks like Andrew Pilata is going to just kind of follow the back marker around smartly.
I thought he was going to try and beat him to the apex there, JG, on the last lap. Might not have been the most prudent thing to do, but
Andrew Pilata can take the win here in round 2 of the F3 race here on season 2 of the Hoosier Racing Tire eSports SCCA Super Tour. Coming home in second should be Caleb Patrie. In third, Chris DeShong. In fourth should be Nick Hems. In fifth should be Jackson McLeod. And in sixth, Paul Slavonic. So, guys, that was an intense race for a lot of different reasons. Wow. JG, your first time sitting to the booth here. Where's your head right about now?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's fun to watch the different approaches. You know, normally, I'm seeing this from behind the wheel. It's neat to see something sort of take shape over the long term here, and see, you know, aggressive guys like Andrew Pilata going after a win, but then you see guys like Chris DeShong, fantastic strategic race, never made a lot of moves that put him in danger, and ended up with a podium finish. Paul Slavonic ended up with a top 10, a deep top 10 finish, 6th place after starting way down in the field by just hanging in there, only 13 seconds back, and hanging around and being there at the end. So a lot of different approaches paying off for drivers tonight.
Yeah, Greg, my heart really goes out to Paul Darling 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
You know, one week it's a random touch that takes him out. This week, obviously he and Max both never had a shot with the car just trying to get his way into the pits. Just heartbreaking.
Yeah, very, very unfortunate for them, but a great run for Andrew. And, you know, after finishing on the second step of the podium last week at Virginia International Raceway, Pilata has a gold medal in around his neck now.
So I don't know if we're going to be able to get one of our podium finishers in here for an interview, as I ask my director. Let's see if we can get Caleb Patrie in here. All right, so Caleb Patrie, who's finished second here in the race tonight, had a lot of great battles, was kind of in the mix of this thing all night. Caleb, great finish, second step of the podium. Walk me through a little bit of your night.
It was a pretty fun race, to say the least. At the start, I just tried to keep my nose clean and try to follow Max and Paul. and the guys behind me started racing me a little bit, so that was tough trying to shake them. But it looked like they both ran into trouble up front, and soon I found myself in the lead. But still, I had a lot of pressure from behind, and they eventually just got around me, and the car got pretty loose there those last few laps, so I was kind of tiptoeing around a bit. But I'll take a second place.
Yeah, we had seen the incident between with Max and with Paul and the back marker, unfortunately, that caught them up. And it looked like you almost as well got caught up in one down there at turn 6. In fact, from our view, it looked like your car was trashed, and all of a sudden tires are still connected and you were continuing. From your view, what did it look like?
I saw a little smoke going into that right-hander. It's a blind corner, so I didn't really see what happened. Then I just heard from my spotter, car stopped, and as I'm flying through the corner, I just see a car spinning in the middle of the track, so I just kind of picked a line and prayed that I wouldn't hit anything.
Gotta shut your eyes and aim for the smoke.
Yep, aim for the gap.
Caleb, you mentioned your spotter feeding you information during the race. Talk a little bit about how important it is to have some additional support during something like this. And one of the things that I've noticed, getting deeper into sim racing, is you have such access to such an immense amount of information that can sometimes be difficult to pare some of it down to relevant information. So how important is it to have somebody watching out for you there?
It's definitely a lot of help, because I know you don't really want to be watching your mirrors the whole time. So mostly you can just rely on your spotter to say if there's somebody right beside you. I know we went 3 wide going into one time, and I kind of just had to trust my spotter, just made sure that he was making the right call. So you kind of just got to listen instead of watching your mirror.
Yeah, it's hard to see much. Certainly out the front, you're kind of looking at a big antenna, and your mirrors aren't really worth much. But having that spotter is just like having a whole set of eyes looking out for you.
Yeah, for sure. It really helps you focus on the track ahead.
Yeah. All right. Well, great finish tonight, Caleb. Finishing there on the podium is tough. This is a tough field. There's some real talent out there, and I know these cars are not easy. Getting a setup is not easy, and so it's a well-deserved second place for you tonight, Caleb. Congratulations.
Cool. Thank you, guys. Can't wait for next week.
Yep, looking forward to it. All right, and so I think we've got our winner with us tonight, Andrew Pilata. Andrew, wow, that was quite a race tonight. Walk me through a little bit of what you had. Some battles going on. You and Caleb were battling, and all of a sudden you kind of found yourself in the lead. Walk me through a little bit of it.
I guess I was probably as surprised as you were to end up kind of in the lead, but Caleb and I had some good battles going back and forth, and I was kind of drawing back to last week at VIR where we started to fall behind Max and Paul. So I kind of started to lay off of them kind of early on so we could start to get some catch back up to them. So I think it worked. I mean, we were able to kind of catch back up to them, and then unfortunately I think they got taken out by lap traffic, and then I think it was game on at that point. But up till then it was just sort of don't make any mistakes and just try to keep putting in laps.
When they got taken out in that incident under the bridge, were you back far enough where that wasn't an issue for you, or was that something you guys had to drive around and somehow still maintain competitiveness?
No, I think it was it was hard for me to tell, because I was right on Caleb coming up through 10, and we come over the hill, and all of a sudden I see parts, and someone's having a yard sale of formula cars at the entry to 12. So. And then I kind of looked down at the relative and saw, or started to put together anyway, what started to happen. So
yeah, one of those guys flew so far off, I think he ended up on a World of Warcraft server. It was a bad scene there, man. We're glad that didn't take your battle out, because you guys were really putting one together. As the race progressed, you had a battle with. For third place among 3 cars. Did you see those 2 lead cars sort of distancing you? Was there any thought about trying to reel them back in, or were you just dealing with your own problems at that point?
Yeah. So again, it was like, when Caleb and I were going back and forth, I was like, let me just lay back and try to not slow him down, so that way we can kind of get back up to them, and then we can kind of start to see what happens. Because one thing that's interesting with these cars is the draft is so strong, and people have such different setups in terms of weighing that it really makes things interesting as to where people are faster or slower. It's not like with the Miatas where you're all kind of basically in the same thing regardless of setup. So you got to kind of learn to figure out where I can kind of take advantage of certain things and where other people can take advantage of certain things, and then try to drive to those strengths and weaknesses. So, yeah, it is fun though.
So do you run the same setup for qualifying as you do for the race?
Yeah, I just take fuel out for qualifying. So I basically just try to learn to drive it as it is and deal with it, and then maybe add a click of wing or something to make it a little bit more safe, because turn one is about the scariest thing I can imagine in this car. So I'm pretty scared of it, and I can't do it as consistently as somebody like Paul or Max can. But I just kind of had to learn to drive within my limits.
Well, thanks, Andrew. Great win tonight. Well deserved, actually. With all the chaos going on, just to kind of survive that. So, really looking forward to seeing you in the next couple of weeks in this. So, great to get a win under your belt, I'm sure.
Yeah, thanks, Lefty. Congrats on 3rd place.
Thanks. All right.
He's a funny one, isn't he?
He is. All right. So before we hit the break, Greg, if you want to.
Yeah, let's talk about another one of the great partners of the SCCA, and that is Tire Rack. And Tire Rack was established over 40 years ago with a product line that fulfills the tire, wheel, suspension, and brake needs of the enthusiasts and their friends for the track and the road. As the official tire retailer of the SCCA and title sponsor of the SCCA National Solo Program, Time Trials National Tour, and Time Trials Nationals, TireRack.com, America's leading high-performance tire and wheel source, is able to showcase a broad range of new products in suspension, brakes, accessories, while supporting the grassroots motorsports enthusiast. So if you have a chance, you have needs for any of these types of products, obviously look for our great partner for over, I believe, 15 years, TireRack.com.
All right, with that, we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back for our Race 2, the MX-5 Cup Cars.
Time Trials is a 2-day event typically for our national events. It's 2 20-minute sessions each day with a track sprint added in, which is, it starts with a standing start, flying finish, so it's a lot like a hill climb. You've got autocrossers out here, you've got road racers out here. It doesn't really matter what your background is, you're gonna find a home here that's pretty rad.
It's a lot of fun, it's a lot of speed, it's safe, and it's a great group of people, and it's very well organized. The organizers really have it running like a top now. Everything from getting transponders on the cars, getting them gridded, getting them out on track safely, and making sure that everybody has a good time.
You have to learn the track, you have to know the track, you have to know how your car's gonna behave on track, because really what a time trial is a qualifying lap. I always say if you get 2 solid laps in, that's perfect, because once you do 2 laps on street tires, you're gonna burn them down. We don't grid by class, we actually grid by experience level. So you'll be with like individuals with like skill levels and like experience, and that's part of what makes this program awesome and an easy entry to get into this kind of thing.
The way the competition is structured, the way the coaching hierarchy is structured to where every group gets a coach and everybody's working on what they're doing every session, it makes it really easy to get new people into it, and that's what this is all about. I particularly like time trials because the barrier to entry is so much lower than like road racing. The level of build quality, especially at time trial nationals like the sport class, is so incredible to where you can show up with a stock car and be competitive because that's what the class is built around. The SCCA, they have a plan, they work the plan, and they pull off some big events, and it's really impressive to see.
Once you get involved with the SCCA time trials and you get a license and you move up the rank, you get up to advanced, then you can move on. If you wanted to dig deeper and get really into time trials, there's other programs out there that they want to see that license to know where you're at and that you're good enough to run. So it's a great place to start, but it's also a great place to blossom and then move on and move up the ranks. Just like road racing, you start as an amateur and you move up to professional. If you've never done it before, just come out and experience it, because the way we set up our time trials, it's perfect for the beginner. We've had people who have never done a track day come out and run with us and have a blast. And I mean, come on, driving 10 cents on a road course, How can you beat that?
When the finish line calls, we answer. Hit the road with insurance protection from Haggerty. Whether you drive a built racer, sports car, or exotic, and save an average of $264. Get a quote today at Haggerty.com.
Welcome back. We've got race number 2 all queued up, and this time we're going to go from wings and downforce to spec cars. We are into MX5 Cup cars for our race 2, and this is going to be a very different kind of race in a way. And Greg and JG, we are all back. Round 1 of this last week at VAR was a freight train of Miatas with last-minute passes, everyone trying to be the second car to make the last pass. What are we going to see tonight here at a very similar type of track here? Are we going to see a last-minute pass for the win, or what are we going to see here?
Well, ask me in about 40 minutes. We're going to see that, but we're going to have close to 50 cars, I think, out for this race. Yeah, I would suspect that we're going to see some very close racing. Now, and I think JG actually alluded to this at the top end of the show. So with iRacing this week, which is the platform that we use for these races each week, there was a very large update that was made to the system earlier this week. And I believe one of the big changes, at least as far as our races each week are concerned, is the modeling of how tires react on the global MX5 Cup cars was updated this week, and that may throw some complications in for some of the drivers that may not have gotten a lot of practice. I think the update was done on Monday, if I remember correctly, and so you may find that there are some drivers that just may not know how these cars will handle here at Road Atlanta on the long run, and how, whether or not they're going to have a car underneath them towards the end of a 20-minute race.
Yeah, you're right. Sometimes when in a car like an F3, like we had saw it, if the tire model changes a bit when you're going from track to track, you don't notice it as much because your entire setup's probably going to change. But in a car like the MX5, you kind of expect there's certain pieces of it that are going to be normal and stable, and yet you're going to tweak some things. JG, have you had a chance to drive this new, or what have you heard about this change that's affecting the handling and the way the tires are behaving?
So I've actually not driven on this new tire model yet, and coming, this MX5 Cup is normally my jam for these events, but the reputation that these MX5 Cup cars have is they're a very, very delicate, very edgy car to drive, and it's not something you can sort of force to do anything. You really have to slow your hands down and be very delicate with your control inputs, or you just lose a lot of momentum and you're sort of constantly on the edge. With the new tire model, the other cars that I've driven with it, it's a much more forgiving tire model. So I would like to think that they've made these MX5 Cup cars a car that you can drive a lot more aggressively. We're seeing Luke Pfeiffer go through turn 7 with a little bit of opposite lock there. That's not something you can usually get away with coming out of a slow corner in these cars. Any sort of counter steering, anything that isn't minimizing straight line friction is gonna slow you down in the long term for these cars.
Well, what's interesting is comparing to that, that idea of it's going to change a little bit of how it drives. What it hasn't seemed to change is the names at the top of the list, because I'm looking at John Allen, who was quickest in practice. He hasn't set a qualifying time yet. He was our race 1 winner, and he was on pole a week ago. I'm looking at Jack Tranter, who was second in practice so far this evening, and Jack Tranter started last week's race in 3rd. I'm looking at Luke Pfeiffer, who was 3rd in practice so far tonight. Well, he was 2nd on the grid last week. So it looks like the same names are at the top in both weeks. Maybe those guys are adapting, or maybe they're getting more seat time. But I'm wondering is if there's an effect on the change, who is it going to impact more?
Well, it might affect Marcus Srivastava or Oscar the Grouch there. We were just following on track, and he's actually 4th fastest at this point in qualifying. But JG makes it sound like the car is maybe a little bit more forgiving, and you may find drivers maybe getting a little bit more, knowing that maybe a little bit more aggressive going into corners, knowing that they can maybe pull things out. But I think that might also promote some closer racing as well here over the long run of a race.
Sure, and actually, I think what you're seeing now is you're seeing a lot of the same names up towards the top, but you are seeing, interestingly enough, a couple of names like 6th place Selin Roland and 10th place Preston Partis, a couple of guys from the real life MX5 Cup series, right, that normally are top 15 or 20 guys. Preston usually actually a little bit faster than Selin in the iRacing space, but all of a sudden both these guys are up in the top 10. So maybe the tire change has actually brought these cars more in line with their real life MX5 Cup cars.
Sure, and of course Preston Partis is our 2017 national champion in Spec Miata in SCCA road racing, but also interestingly enough, sitting up, I believe, 2nd provisionally right now is Michael Carter in the number 08 car. And JG, we don't want to forget Michael, because he is another one of those drivers that is in the real live Global MX5 Cup, and he actually finished, I believe he finished 3rd last week at VIR here on the eSports Super Tour. So he seems to have a good feeling for how these cars hold up.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to note that while we do see from week to week a lot of the same names in the top 10, in the top 20, there's quite a bit of variety within that mix. It isn't 1 or 2 people dominating this series. You see a guy like David Marcus down in the 13th now. David will be up 2nd, 3rd place some weeks and struggling a bit this week. But you say struggling, 1st place to 9th place now is barely more than half a second at this point. So there's only so much struggle you're being allowed in a close field like this at the moment.
Here's interesting. We're following Coyote Black right now in the 23 car. Those of you who are, of course, SCCA members and get Sports Car Magazine, there was a great cover story on Coyote, I believe, in the March issue. He is out of the Steel Cities region, drives at Pittsburgh. Actually, went to driver's school at Summit Point Raceway after never having been on a racetrack ever before in a street car or a race car, and he did pretty darn well at the national championship runoffs at VIR last year, and I believe this is the first time we're seeing him out on the eSports Super Tour.
Yeah, definitely. I met him at the runoffs last year at VIR. Great guy, super enthusiastic. So if you had a chance to pick up your sports car, read that cover story. Very, very interesting guy. One of those great personalities in the club that love to see highlighted and kind of to learn about. So really cool to see him participating in this tonight.
Yeah, he's I think he's sitting 48th right now in the order.
So DJ Alessandrini, just to get back to where we're at, DJ was 5th quickest in practice, finished 2nd last week in the race. This is his first qualifying lap. So he's kind of late to start his qualifying. We're getting full 20 minutes to get your 4 laps in, so it looked like he was just kind of sitting back and waiting his time. He's, as we remember from season 1 and those 6 races that we ran, he was always in the mix, in the top. In fact, I think he won, 4 out of the 6 or something like that. Was very quick in all of them. We expect him to be there in the end. But with some competition kind of rising around him, seems like there's a lot more challengers with the names of Allen and Tranter and Carter and now Srivastava, Ryan Maloney. These guys are definitely putting up a pretty good fight to challenge DJ.
Yeah, and he's a guy that is DJ anyway, who's online 3, 4, 5 times a week, running in highly competitive races in various series. Both iRacing House series and in sort of planned series like this SCCA eSports Super Tour. So he's a guy that literally every time he is on the virtual track, it is at a very highly competitive level. But we've definitely seen the level of competition around him get closer and closer. And the level of competition through this entire SCCA field is extremely deep and extremely polite as well. One of the best things about this series is just how easy it is to race, even for somebody like me who is lucky to crack into the top 15 or so every week. The racing is very courteous, very professional, and you're never worried about too much craziness going on around you. Especially, this is of course week 13 in iRacing, which Larry, I'll let you explain to everybody what that means. But it is basically if you've ever seen Stripes, it is the "Here Come Your Men Now, Sir" scene in Stripes.
That is an amazing reference. And I was going to say, I see a lot of parallels to a real SCCA paddock, whether it be road racing, whether it be autocross or time trials. DJ here, of course, he's a great driver on track here on the eSports Super Tour, and as you mentioned, he gets a lot of seat time in a lot of different series, but he gives back quite a bit as well. He's posted up for the drivers some different setups that he has for the Global MX-5 Cup cars at more or less every single one of the racetracks that we have been at. Now, of course, those are setups for the cars, different suspension setups, tire pressures, what have you, that he, of course, has been able to dial in, and maybe what may be a good fit for him may not be a good fit for another driver, but he puts that out there. I've also started to see some videos that he's put together on YouTube to give drivers tips on how to get around some of the different racetracks as well, and different markers, different focal points that they should be looking for to help them make their way around the track. And so he really gives quite a bit back
you guys
to
are
the
really
folks that he's
ballooning
racing
his
with.
ego beyond what you even realize. The DJ doesn't need any more feeding of his ego. It's just
all right. Well, I just don't want to get on his bad side. That's all. But
he's a great guy. He's fun. We've interviewed him, as you know, a bunch of times. And his ego is big. But at times his ego comes right back crashing down. The race at Mid Ohio for the season finale race, he was the first one to admit that he, in his term, quote unquote, he murdered John Allen just coming out of madness. Yeah. He knew what his mistake was. Very humble at times. So appreciate that. By the way, if you hadn't noticed the ticker that's been noting here, he's got 2 laps in, both of them disallowed for track limits. He's testing the limits of the track, but at the same time, we know this car does need to build a little bit of heat in the tires. So is it really an issue if you go off track limits twice in a row, or does it become an issue if you do it 3 times?
Well, we saw with Max King now, again, in the last race, of course, Max King had some issues, not due to track limits, but he'd actually wrecked the car on his 3rd of 4th flying laps. And and it didn't hurt him that much because he started on the outside of the front row. But yes, it could certainly be a problem if you have to start from 10th or 10th position or a little bit further back. And right now he is currently sitting, as you mentioned, without a time in the books. Yeah. So it's always an issue. And I might add that there are only about 3.5 minutes left to go in the session, so he doesn't have a lot of time if he doesn't get it right on this lap. And we'll see here as he crosses the stripe. Did he get one in this time? Doesn't look like it.
Doesn't have one. So okay, so at this point, all right, JG, you've had to have been in this position before. You've run time trials, you've been out there, you've done these things. You need to get one clean qualifying flying lap. You can't make a mistake. But if you're DJ and you're the favorite, you can't win this race from probably 15th. Where do you, around Road Atlanta, where do you take a risk that's calculated? Where do you have to be conservative to make sure you don't push it off?
Well, you certainly, as we've talked about all night, certainly turn 7 is critical, because a couple more miles of hour of top speed going down the back straight is going to pay big dividends in your time. But Road Atlanta can be a frustrating track at the same time, especially in iRacing, because you have these track limits that are sort of enforced by the computer, and they are unforgiving. But it's also a track that you can exploit those curbs quite a bit, and some of those track limits are positioned in such a way that you might take the fastest line around a corner, but it might not necessarily be legal. So you've got to be a bit conservative on that last lap, especially places like going through turn 3, because you can only take so much track at turn 3 and get away with it, even though you can take a ton of track and still go fast. Turn 10 that he just went through, you can take a ton of curb there, but you can't get away with it every time. It makes you quicker, but you can't get away with it on the algorithm.
All right, there we go. Yeah, and he sets he does get a lap time in now, and that puts him at P6. So he's still currently sitting at best on the third row, and we've seen him make his way.
Yeah,
his way.
I mentioned that the pressure of I got to get a lap in now. This is the only chance I'm going to get. It's sort of like at a time trial when you got clear track. The only chance you're going to get is that one moment. I mentioned that because time trials are now running. The Time Trial National Tour events are out there. I think, Greg, and I know that JG, you've actually done one of these, but I think we've got our schedule coming up. If you guys want to talk a little bit about what's coming up.
Absolutely. We've got a couple of events coming up, and you can see here, and if you want to sign up for these, if you go to timetrials.scca.com, you can. We've got an event actually this weekend at Eagles Canyon Raceway in Decatur, Texas, so there's still time to sign up for that. Then we've got the following weekend, June 13th and 14th at the Ridge Motorsports Park, and that's going to be in conjunction with Global Time Attack. That's out in Shelton, Washington, and then over the July 4th weekend, and I believe this is the second year in a row we've been out at Thompson over the 4th of July weekend. So Thompson Speedway, that is in Thompson, Connecticut, and a great opportunity for you to bring your car out on track. And it is not wheel-to-wheel competition, but you run against the clock there, and it's great fun. Definitely recommend that you head out there. Also wanted to mention that we also have our Track Night in America program where you bring your car out on track, and these are just these are not timed events. They are more educational events. We have a number of them coming up soon as well. We're going to have it also this weekend at Eagles Canyon, also Pikes Peak International Raceway on June 9th, and at Atlanta Motorsports Park on June 10th. So definitely look for those. If to bring your car on track for the Track Night in America program, you can go to tracknightinamerica.com.
Yeah, great
a lot of great programs, and just extremely accessible programs. If you're thinking about getting into any sort of competition on track, the time trial program is a fantastic way to do it. You don't need a lot of equipment. You don't need roll cages and roll bars. You can do it in your street car with very mild safety, personal safety prep. So if you're thinking about climbing that ladder into more high-speed competition, it's a great rung on the ladder towards road racing, or it's a great place to stop and just be a time trial competitor, because the level of competition and the level of intensity is just fantastic.
All right, real quick, we mentioned, of course, and talked about it during the first race, the great prizes that are available to the winners of the eSports Super Tour, and we've got a great prize as well for Global MX5 winners. And as we've been talking about the Time Trials Nationals, this is a great thing. Both Coney and Hawk, Coney Shocks and also Hawk Performance are going to be awarding some great prizes. The MX5 Series champion on this season is going to win a set of Coney Shocks. They're also going to win Hawk pads and rotors and a free entry to the 2020 Tire Rack Time Trials National Championship powered by Haggerty. That's going to be at NCM Motorsports Park in Bowling Green, Kentucky a little bit later this year. So a great prize there. We'll talk about Coney and Hawk in just a few moments here as it looks like the pace lap has started. Larry, let's run down the grid here real quick.
All right, so on the pole this week in our round 2 is Jack Tranter. And just barely, because this is going to be a very tight field, just barely edging out on the outside of row 1, Michael Carter. So that's your front row here for Road Atlanta. On the second row, Luke Pfeiffer, and all three of those guys at a 38.2. So again, very tight. On the outside of row 2 is your round 1 winner, John Allen. On the raking up row 3 is Marcus Srivastava, and he'll be alongside the driver we were just following there at the end of qualifying, DJ Alessandrini. Also, in fact, identical 38.367s for Mark and for DJ. Srivastava will be on the inside, DJ on the outside. Row 4, Selin Rowland. He managed a top 5 finish last week. He's going to start this race in 7th on row 4. He'll be alongside Tony Chow. Row 5 will be Ryan Maloney, had a top 5 finish last week. He'll start this week alongside Elias Roman, who I believe also was a top 5 finisher last week. So got a lot of folks. He was, I think, maybe 6th last week. So we got a lot of folks here returning, ready for another top 5 and 6 finish. That'll be your top 10. Elias Roman starting on the grid. Get you a couple more names here, and that's because the top 16 in this field are within 1 second of each other. Row 6, Aaron Johnson and Preston Pardis. Row 7, it'll be Justin Hall and Trace Hance. Row 8, Ismail Basso and David Marcus. And the entire front 8 rows make up exactly 1 second, from a 38.218 to a 39.218.
Yeah,
so guys, yeah.
I was going to say they're very closely packed, Larry, as they head down the back straight here on the pace lap. Let's talk real quick about one of those partners that we had just mentioned, and that is Hawk Performance, and they are the official brake products of the SCCA. And for over 25 years, championship-winning drivers and teams have demanded Hawk Performance motorsport brake pads. Now you can have their advanced technology on your daily car, truck, or SUV with Hawk Performance Street Friction products. With the improved HP Plus pad for that hybrid street and track feel, or Super Duty pads for your tow vehicle, or the new Talon Street Rotors, Hawk has all of your braking needs covered. Visit hawkperformance.com and like them on Facebook to learn more about Hawk Performance Advantage. Hawk Performance, what's stopping you?
All right, so as they line up, and right now they're two by two coming down the hill, ready to come down the front straight. Safety car is in, and we've got a green flag waving. Let's see how wide we go. I'm going to expect to see 3 and 4 and maybe 5 wide through turn 1, as there's lots of opportunities to do it. We're going to go at least 2, and I see a couple 3 wides already, as Srivastava is going to be on the outside. Can we get through cleanly before we get to 3, and how much discipline does this field have to get through turn 3? And look at that, front 10, maybe front 15 already going single file through turn 3. There's a lot of discipline.
Yeah, it's not until you get to about 20 cars back in the field before they start to go side by side through there. Now, JG, we mentioned earlier some of the Global MX5 Cup drivers to look after, and I'll tell you, we probably want to look after Selin Rowland, who started 7th, and I think he just made a pass for 6th. He during the first season of the Super Tour really showed himself to be an extremely aggressive driver. I'd say almost as aggressive as DJ Alessandrini, who we see now moving up to 4th position. So definitely watch for the 43 car along with the number 91, and we'll see if they can march their way up towards the front.
Yeah, Selin, definitely a very aggressive guy. One of my Florida guys, in fact, used to autocross with his dad, and I'm at the age where I can say that about people now. But we're seeing passes for the lead already as Tranter gives up the lead going into turn 10. MX5 Cup racer from real life, Michael Carter, takes him under the bridge.
Yeah.
Oh, look at this.
Fun, and that's going to be a bit of an incident coming out of the chicane there.
Yeah, we had just talked about Selin Rowland in the 43 car, and he spun coming out of 10B, and it looks like David Marcus got in. Let's take a look at a replay here.
A couple of South Florida guys there in a Fort Lauderdale street fight, basically. But yeah, Selin got into it coming out of turn 10B, and then Marcus just cleaned the front of that car off.
Man, it looks like Luke Pfeiffer got into him coming through turn 10B there.
Yeah, it's tight racing, and sometimes that happens, especially coming out of a chicane like there. We know it's easy to get a little bit loose and some, side by side, but hasn't changed what's happening at the front, as it's still Michael Carter just a nose ahead of Jack Tranter. And we mentioned first lap already. Carter made that pass. I suspect we're going to be seeing a lot of that down this back straight. I think that's how these cars are going to be racing. I think it's going to be a lot of 2 passing 1, 4 passing 3 in this 4-car passing group that we've got right now through turn 7.
The one thing I think we're going to see in this MX5 Cup race is a lot more strategic drafting going down this back straight. If you're within about 3 car lengths of somebody coming out of turn 7, you've got a fantastic draft going down that back straight to the point where you have to adjust your braking area for turn 10. But that's going to be important as this race draws on.
Yeah, we were just watching Murphy Nichols there make his way through the field. I think Murphy may be the youngest driver in the series. I believe he's only 15 years old. He can't even race, can't even get behind the wheel of a real race car yet, but I believe he finished 6th last week at Virginia International Raceway, so a great run from him.
Contact
there's some action in turn 10. That was I think somebody steering with the keyboard there is what's going on, Larry.
Could be. They have the old Nintendo D-pad going on. Sean Hayes out of Illinois there involved in that one. That's a tough place because it's so enticing to want to make a pass going into that chicane because you think, I'm going to outbrake this guy, I'm going to get on the outside, I'm going to get alongside him, but it's really a single file.
And we've got Tranter back in the lead. Can we go back and see where that happened? They're heading through the S's now with Tranter back in the lead.
Yep.
Yeah, it looks like going down the back straight here under the draft. And, I wanted to talk about this just a little bit. We were discussing how critical a draft is here with these Global MX5 Cup cars, and you can get a good run. The question becomes, and I see this a lot of times in Formula V racing and frankly in Spec Miata racing in real life as well, that very early on in the race, I think, and you'll see this towards the front of the pack, that it's not so critically important that you try to defend these draft passes at the end of the straightaway, or maybe going into turn 1. That the most important thing may be to let these passes occur so that both drivers can keep up their momentum, and that may be how you separate yourselves from the rest of the pack. Matter of fact, we saw during our first race in F3 that our leaders were battling it out pretty much from the drop of the green flag, and it allowed for a 4-car battle for the lead up in front as opposed to just a 2-car battle.
I think what you see a little bit, especially in evenly matched cars like these, is a lot of experimentation, a lot of probing, a lot of figuring out where you can make those moves, even if you don't complete those moves, just figuring out what you can do at different areas of the track and keeping that knowledge back a little bit, not necessarily acting on it right away, and only using it when it's to your strategic advantage.
Yeah, and I think that's what DJ is doing now with Alan, and I think Alan mentioned and DJ mentioned last week. These guys race together a lot. They have a lot of data. I don't know how much data they've got on Jack Tranter and Michael Carter. They might actually be collecting that data right now on them. You can even see DJ and Alan kind of working together. But because they're being patient behind them and watching this, I almost wonder if they're allowing Pfeiffer and Srivastava to get a little bit closer. As you can see, it's now a 5-car battle.
I don't know.
Well, and Alan just sort of pulls off a little bit, get a very bad exit coming out of turn 7 and gets freight trained by a couple of cars there. I don't know if that was, I'm not sure what happened there. He just did not get a great exit coming off of that corner.
Yeah, so Luke Pfeiffer gets around him, and you can see there, looks like Alan might have fallen just a little bit out of the draft. I was thinking that, okay, so he lost a little bit of ground and lost a position coming out of turn 7, but he's probably going to be able to get right back into the battle here, and you can see he's pulled right back up behind Pfeiffer as they come through 10A and 10B, so not a lot lost other than a position on track, and it's just one more car that he's going to have to try and get around to make it up towards the podium.
The issue now is DJ and Pfeiffer now may have lost a little bit trying to avoid Allen and trying to make sure that Tranter and Carter don't escape.
And that's one of the more absurd things about racing in this virtual space is you've got other you never know what might distract you. You could spill your drink in your lap. Your foot could slip off a pedal. So you have other things going on that are real life. We've had weather incidents that are real life weather incidents that have affected the outcome of a race. Just one of those, one more variable you have to throw into this already very exciting mix.
And you can see here, we've talked about the curbing here at Road Atlanta before, and these drivers you see as they took the curbing at the apex of turn 5, how it really unsettles the cars. And one of the places we see incidents very often is actually coming right out of this corner here, turn 5. The cars will get loose. We see a car going very wide here on exit, and what they will do, there's a little bit of a gravel trap just out of our camera view. The drivers will drop a wheel into that gravel trap and shoot all the way across the track. Drivers left. It looks like they all made it through that time, but you have to be very careful making it around some of these corners to not unsettle the car too much.
And one thing I am hearing online a little bit is that this V7, this new tire model that is on the MX-5 Cup cars now, has made it a much more drivable car, a car you can get a lot more aggressive with. And I think we saw that earlier, seeing the footage of some of those cars getting through turn 5 sort of crossed up and sideways. That's not something you can really get away with in these cars before. So it sounds like they've created a much more realistic MX-5 here that is actually something you can drive very aggressively.
Yeah, I think if you go back on the iRacing platform about a year and a half ago, the car was a much easier car to drive. When they went to that tire upgrade, my opinion, the car got to be like driving on ice at times, especially on that out lap. The car was just almost sketchy. You had to really try and find a setup that made it a lot more drivable. When it got on warm tires, it wasn't so bad. I think what they've done this week, what I'm hearing is that they've changed the way the tire just behaves. It's not a complete tire model change, but they've changed the way the tire behaves and just a minor tweak to it. But that minor tweak seems to be what you're describing, a drivability improvement. It's not so wicked to the driver where it just snaps around on you. It's a lot more supple, a lot more elastic for you.
And I actually saw some of those comments from my friend Stephen Duckworth, who, now I know you guys last week during the race endowed me, because I have some ducks here on our property, and a couple of them are pets. So you endowed me with the nickname Duck Trickle. Well, apparently, unbeknownst to us, that's been Stephen Duckworth's nickname for a while. And I just, out of respect for him and as a friend, I probably should say here live on the air that, sorry, it's mine now.
All right. I'm fine leaving him with that one. I'm fine, because the idea of the name was the old days of Dick Trickle, that we always had some mid-pack guy. We had to come up with his name. I got a better one for you. We're just going to call you Mid-Pack Mallard.
There you go.
Is that okay?
Wow. There we go. Hey, now you guys we just saw some of the video of the number 35 car there go around at turn 5. Pretty much what I had been explaining the lap before. Very, very difficult, but we'll now see as our leaders hammer over the curbing here at turn 3, and you can see now how they're getting much more aggressive and really on that fine line between what is on and within the track limits and over the track limits there as they hammer that curb much as the cars do in real life.
Yeah, this pack is really interesting, because we're just past the halfway point of the race. Tranter's got a lead, but at this point you're a sitting duck. Back to the Mallard jokes. If you're 7/10 out going out of the back straight at this track, it doesn't mean much. But watching DJ being patient here, Allen has managed to stay in this even after the mistake he saw earlier. Carter is in this. Pfeiffer, and Srivastava has just sort of clung to the back of this pack.
Yeah,
he has definitely picked up pace.
Yeah, he's just a little bit off of that pack, as we see here, and you see this all the time in Spec Miata as well, where DJ Alessandrini is more or less teamed up with Jack Tranter, and those two drivers are pushing their way past, or probably with Michael Carter, and they're pushing their way past Tranter. So we've got Michael Carter now sitting in the lead. Oh, look at this. We got a little, looked like a little touch there between Alessandrini and Tranter.
He's bullying him just a little bit. But it's all safe. It's good, clean side-by-side racing. And again, just like we saw a minute ago, now it's going to be Carter with a 7, 8, 9, 10s gap on them. And it won't mean much because they'll come off a 7 and they'll gain it all back. But this goes back to, I think, what JG, you were saying a minute ago. Everybody's gathering data, right? Everybody's feeling each other out. Where can we try something side-by-side? How much gap can we reel somebody in on the last lap? This is their chances, and I'm watching DJ try these things. I'm watching John Allen sort of following it. I'm just kind of watching, see who's collecting this data. Meanwhile, I'm still watching Srivastava back there clinging to this, and I'm wondering, is he clinging because he doesn't have the pace, or is he clinging because he's just waiting to pass, and he's just kind of waiting for the right opportunity to get by Pfeiffer and get up there with Allen and DJ?
And when you see stuff like we just saw, three groups of 2 cars going side by side through turn 12 at Road Atlanta, that's not, that's watching Cirque du Soleil, but they're all like high on mushrooms, because it is it's the chances that is actually going to work for you lap after lap are very, very low. And we got some folks showing some really, really impressive driving skill here.
I always think the same thing, but then Greg and I, we sat there and watched DJ do that with Tom O'Gorman in a couple of different cars, with the Miatas as well as in some of the Porsche cars, race after race for that entire season. And what did we see? One time, like at VAR, they made contact, but how many times do we see them side by side doing this? We kept saying they can't keep this up, but yet they would. It's amazing when these guys have got that much trust in the car and that much trust in each other to be able to put it that close side by side.
I think what we just saw there from that in-car shot coming down the back straight too, that Jack Tranter and DJ Alessandrini in 2nd and 3rd place made up a ton of ground as a 2-car draft on Carter in the lead that they might not have done alone. So you've got some aerodynamic trickery going on here when you've got multi-car drafting groups trying to find out what is the right number of Miatas to poke the ideal hole in the air.
Yeah,
and then getting to decide who gets to take advantage of that at the end of the straightaway.
Exactly. And we talked earlier about how they model the tracks and scan the tracks, but iRacing has worked closely with Mazda to make this car very, very similar to what it is in real life, regardless of the tires. And I look back to the runoffs, the SCCA National Championship runoffs that we had a couple of years ago at Daytona, where there was a lot of testing within the Spec Miata group as far as what the optimal number of cars in a draft you should have, whether it be 2 cars, 3 cars, or 4 cars. And in their testing, what they found is if they had 4 cars together, they were about 3 miles an hour slower coming off the oval than if they had 2 cars together. But 3 cars was actually faster than both of those combinations. And so I think we're seeing kind of the same thing here as Tranter gets a little defensive on Michael Carter going down in the 10A and holds off that pass attempt.
And really interesting, thing we just saw there with Carter. You can sort of tell the real life racers from the hardcore sim racers. You saw a couple of brake lights come on from the back of Carter's car while he was still accelerating down the straightaway. Very much a road racer move to slide that left foot over, tap that brake pedal a little bit to set those brake pads. Just something you sort of naturally do by habit, and it's sort of clear that that's what he's doing in there. So you're
oh, look at this. It's his Alessandrini. And Carter goes side by side through turn 3, somehow make it work with some backmarker traffic right ahead of him to boot. That was special to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to do it through the 10A and B, but to do it through 3 is a whole different level of gutsy.
And to have the room on exit as the inside car pops over that curb, JG, you know that when the car lands, there's a bit of a drift there as the car starts to slide out the driver's left over towards that curbing, and to get the to stick the landing basically and not go right into the car right beside you was pretty amazing.
Yeah, this is getting me excited about getting back into one of these cars with the new tire model, because there's these guys are obviously doing some impressive drivability moves. Boy, look at the closing
draft.
speed
Yes.
that Carter and Alessandrini have on Tranter going down that back straightaway.
Oh, Alessandrini for a second, I thought he might make it 3 wide, but it's difficult to make the move from all the way drivers left in there, and we have a new leader.
And we're also coming down to the point where these guys are going to have to make a decision where they want to be. Oh, and there goes Alessandrini trying to make a pass for the lead going through turn 12.
I was going to say, there's that data, right? Alessandrini backs off before they hit the breaking point of 10. He lets the 2 guys straighten out in front of him, but yet they come down the hill, and he gets by at least one of them with a shot of getting by the other one.
Yeah, look at John Allen. For a second there, I thought John Allen might get into the back of Tranter, but got on the brakes just enough. Yeah.
A little bit of contact?
Yeah, getting word there might have been a little bit of contact there, and but they seem to make it work. Yeah, you can actually see the dent. Thank you to Kyle Heyer, our director, who drew in the. I feel like I'm watching a hockey game here with the telestrator. This is actually pretty cool. But you can see the damage on the fender.
And we're definitely now in a position where I think any of these guys in the top 5, if they position themselves correctly, are still in the running for a win. Pfeiffer and Allen have dropped back just a little bit, but with the 2-car draft, they might easily make that up on this back straight right now.
So, okay, I think what we're looking at here is you need to be in the top 3 on the last lap, because 4th looks like you're too far back. You probably don't want to be in the lead, but can you win it from the lead coming off of turn 7? Because they're going to pass you, but it almost looks like there may be opportunities to get it back as long as you don't lose more than 1 spot here at turn 10.
Well, I think the question will be is, as they follow you out of turn 7, can you defend enough? Can you stay to the inside enough that it forces the other drivers to take the outside line? And whether or not they've got enough momentum when you make the move, can they actually get around you and not have to go all the way around the outside, coming through 10A and then have to set up for 10B? But
so we got 2 laps to go, and so with 2 laps to go, this is where I'm seeing DJ forcing the issue a little bit. He looks like he wants to be in that 2nd position. He might probably take the lead, give the lead back, and then take it again maybe on the last lap. It kind of looks like where he's trying to position. Definitely doesn't want to be forced into a 4th position anywhere.
Yeah, and DJ has actually given up a couple of passes that he could have made into turn 10, it looked like, to be able to stay behind Carter usually, and then experiment a little bit going under the bridge and see if he can make a last-minute pass for start finish as they went through turn 12. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does here. Maybe not on this lap, but certainly on the next lap where he positions himself.
And you see here Jesse Waymeyer, who was running, I believe, 38th at the time, saw the leaders coming, and he just drove off the outside to let the leaders by. And I thought the leaders were coming up on him at probably the worst spot you could. So he just drove the car straight off, made it a lot easier for them.
So here's your test for Carter. What happens? Or is everybody just going to sit and just pretend to be patient?
Well, here you go. Not so much. We've got DJ Alessandrini coming down the inside. He's going to hold Carter out. And the question is, can he hold him out enough? Doesn't look like it. And now Tranter's got a run down the inside as well. And that might push DJ all the way back to 3rd.
This goes back to you want to be 2nd. Everybody, the theory is you want to be 2nd, but is there any problem with being 3rd right now? Look, everybody wants 2nd. Even Allen wants to be 2nd, all the way from 4th. All right, so last lap, final lap, white flag is out. Carter's got the lead now. I'm looking at 5 cars. Only 3 can be on the podium. Only 1 can take the win. Guys, where do you want to be right now, and who's your dog to win this?
Right now, JG, I want to be Tranter. I think he's got the position here, unless DJ gets a little push there from John Allen and can get around Tranter early enough on the back straight here. I think Tranter's got the position as long as he doesn't throw away speed on the exit of turn 7.
Yeah, I think this turn 7 is going to be critical here. DJ's got great speed through 10, 10A, 10B, and 11, but he wasn't quite making that pass before start finish. So I think we're going to see. I think you're going to see a three wide braking into turn 10A here in just a second.
Yeah.
So here we are. We're on the back straight, and it is Carter he's going to move right, and you're going to have Tranter going left. Now, where does DJ come in? Because he's not quite there yet, but here he comes. Does it go 3 wide, as the guys have said?
Yeah, you see that, and that's what makes it hard for DJ, because Tranter did not get up enough on the inside to even allow DJ to get up to Carter's
But there goes
door.
DJ back inside using that great speed through 11.
I don't think he's going to have enough to catch Tranter, but he is definitely got enough for second to get ahead of Carter. But it's going to look like hanging on for the win here in round 2. It looks like it's going to be Jack Tranter taking the win. DJ Alessandrini coming home in second. Michael Carter third. John Allen fourth. And Luke Pfeiffer rounding out your top 5 here in the Global MX5 Cup cars. 6th place will go to Marcus Srivastava, 7th to Ryan Maloney, 8th to Elias Roman, 9th Tony Chow, and rounding out the top 10. Top 10 will be Justin Hall, and the battle here for 14th, as there are still nose to tail battles everywhere. I believe this is going to be Paul Robinson and Aaron Johnson. And then we've got the battle here this is Trevor Renson leading the pack for Nathan Stratton, Will Robbins here for 19th, 20th, 21st. So battles all the way down the field as we wrap up this huge field tonight. We never even talked about how big this field was.
Well, it was 54 cars, I believe, at the green flag, and we had almost that many cars finish. I think we had right around 50 cars cross the finish line here at the end. So great run there by Jack Tranter. Took the win from pole. Guys, while we wait and see if we can get Jack or some of our other podium finishers here, let's quickly talk about Coney shock absorbers. Of course, we mentioned Coney has some skin in the game. They're offering up a set of shocks to our winner of Season 2 in Global MX5 Cup. And both Coney and SCCA have had a very strong history all the way back from the 1950s and, of course, up to the present day. Coney adjustable shocks and struts have for decades been a cornerstone and often a starting point for performance, suspension, refinement, and tuning. From being the maker of the industry's very first adjustable shock absorber to today's patented FSD street shocks, Coney has long demonstrated that product improvement means product innovation. For more information regarding Coney products and activities, go to www.coney-na.com, or you can visit them on social media at Facebook, Coney Shock Absorbers, and Instagram at Coney Shocks.
I'd like to point out quick what a fantastic race Jack Tranter ran. I'm looking at some of the results right now, and Tranter won that race without even posting a best time in the top 5. So to be able to do that and then hold that kind of fast traffic behind you without really making a lot of aggressively defensive moves, real testament to just keeping it clean and keeping composed through that entire race.
Yeah, we saw him. He gave up the lead a number of times. Michael Carter was there sitting up at the front, and he was able to, at very opportune times, put that car back in the lead. As you said, not the fastest car on track, but probably had the best positioning of a car on track. And it's a little surprising. Michael Carter, actually from the Atlanta area, and that is his home track in real life, and actually got his very first SCCA Major Series win at Road Atlanta, I believe now 4 years ago. Again, not surprising that he'd run up towards the front, but that Tranter was able to hold him off. I thought, I would think that Carter would probably have enough tricks up his sleeve that he would have found a way by. But great run by Jack Tranter.
Yeah, absolutely great run. And we've got a race winner, Jack Tranter, here with us. Jack, pole to checker, right? Easy win for you, or actually watching it anything but easy? Walk me through some of that intensity.
Yeah, I wish it was as easy as it may look. I mean, out front, the laps are out front, but I'm sweating bullets the whole time, especially when I got people like Carter behind me and DJ and John and everybody. Those aren't easy laps, trust me. But yeah, I mean, it was honestly, I just taking it lap by lap, kind of having to play the draft game. But it's just really cool to be able to race with like Michael Carter, like such an accomplished MX5 driver. DJ, obviously, you guys know how good he is at this stuff. And John and everybody, it's just super fun. I'm finally glad one worked out for me though. So
yeah, so you actually managed to win this thing while going into the final lap. on the lead, which at this track, based on where the good drafting areas are, not always the easiest thing to do. What was that final lap like? It didn't look like you were playing defense too much. It looked like you had the pace to hold those guys off. But how exciting was that final lap? How much of it was in your mirrors?
I'm still trying to remember a lot of it, actually. I'm like playing everything. We swapped a lot those last few after, I think it was actually like 3 laps before I had missed a shift onto the backstretch, which really made everything get crazy. But yeah, I mean, Michael, I had the draft on him down the backstretch. I was expecting him to throw something. I was kind of getting ready, but I had the inside open, so I knew that was the biggest passing zone, so had to make it stick, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We even saw a couple times, I don't know if you were involved with it, but a couple of 2 wides through turn 3, a couple of 2 wides through the chicane at 10A, 10B, but all clean. It just was amazing to watch you guys mirror to mirror almost how clean it was. No contacts there.
Those are some of those moves I think that you wish you could try in real life, but your gut kind of holds you back. But here, you can really go for them. It makes you feel like a hero when they come off right. But sometimes they don't, but when they do, it feels really good.
So, Jack, talk a little bit about we've seen iRacing go to a new tire model for these MX-5 Cup cars this week, and this is the first series race we've had on the new tire model. What is it like compared to the old tire model? And I asked that as somebody who's going to be in one of these cars next week. So, and for the folks out there who haven't yet had a chance to drive on these new tire models.
Honestly, this is the first time I've driven on it. I hadn't done any practice up until Road Atlanta is by far my favorite track, so I just knew if I hit my points, it'd all be good. But the only thing I really felt that was different is it's actually a lot better throughout the race. So I would say it's an improvement. There isn't anything to be like scared of. It still has that scary first like 2 laps skating, kind of floating around the track, but the rest of it, I think the tires just keep getting better and better.
Huh. Yeah, that's good news for a lot of folks that have driven this car. They make it 1 lap around, go, that thing's like driving on ice, and they walk away. It's good to know that it actually keeps getting better. It's a good thing. But great race, fantastic racing with yourself and that whole pack at the front. Like as you mentioned, there's no lack of talent at the front of this field, and you're right in the middle of that talent pack. So well-deserved win tonight. Looking forward to seeing you continuing this at the next race at Lime Rock next week. So good win tonight.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jack. And joining us now is DJ Alessandrini. DJ, first I want to talk about your qualifying tonight that almost had you at the back of the field. What was going on?
I was just like, I got 4 laps. I'm just going to send it. And then I just keep getting 1 exit. It's not ideal. I had a pole position in like 2 of the laps there, but yeah, I just dipped a tire in a weird spot. I just kept dropping like a half a tire into the entry on 10A. And each time I was like, crap. So then I just do it again. And then the next lap, I just do the same thing again. So I kind of had to play it a little safe on my last lap there. So, I mean, I knew I could work through the crowd. It just made my life a little tougher than it needed to be.
Yeah, and you mentioned going very aggressive in 10A there. You were actually really good. Especially towards the closing stages of the race, making moves through 10A and then even through 11 and passing coming down the hill. Where did you actually want to be going into that last lap?
I wanted to be in second, but the way it worked out into the second to last lap, I basically had to attack Michael, or I would have been in third either way. So I was hoping that maybe putting some pressure on. Maybe I could get something done. I really don't like the inside going into 10A. I'd rather have the outside just because you get that better run, and then you can cover anybody up if you're under attack, from third place behind. So it was an ideal situation, but I didn't really see a way to stay in second because Jack wasn't just going to sit back there. So it wasn't ideal. And Michael did a good job of basically forcing that fight between Jack and I. But he made a little bit of a misstep in turn 1 and turn 3, so it was still a run to the finish. If he would have nailed those sections, maybe Jack wouldn't have had such a good run coming out of 7 on him.
I got to ask one thing: is next time you take your Grid Life car down to Road Atlanta, are you going to go side by side through 3 like you did tonight in this car?
I've already done it. I went side by side through 12 too, overlapping mirrors and dipping wheels in the grass. Let me tell you, it's fun going up to the guy afterwards and going, "Hey, just to let you know, this is my third ever race weekend."
That was we looked at that. We were talking about something else. We all just sort of stopped and went, great graphic. Thanks, Kyle. You're now considered a wild man. We were talking about something else. We looked at the screen and we see you completely four wheels over the curb in three, and there's still a car and you're outside. We went, we got to talk about that. So I see it on replay. It's pretty good.
You know, the great thing about the sim is I don't have to work on the car. The car is fine all the time. I don't have to worry about expensive things. I just send it and I know it will be okay.
Yeah, well, it was good. Actually, the big compliment is it was clean racing. I said the same thing to Jack. You guys were side mirror to side mirror, just completely clean. All five of you guys at the front, just constantly swapping spots. A couple little dings on fenders here and there, but I mean, rubbing's a little bit of racing, it's fine. But amazing, clean, courteous, but really aggressive, fun racing. Great to watch. I loved it. It was a lot of fun. Hopefully, it was this fun for you.
Yeah, as the season progresses, I haven't raced a lot with Jack or Michael, so as the season progresses, you'll get more of a feel for what you can get away with around them and the kind of the behavior that they're going to display and, kind of get a feel. I felt a little blind going into the end of the race there. I realized at some point, I'm like, I've never raced against Jack before. I don't know if he's going to try to push me past to be in second or pass me to be in second or whatever. And normally I have a feel for what the driver behind me is going to do, but I haven't really raced with Jack a whole lot. So I just had to go with what I felt was the safest option at that point. It was a lot of fun just trying to figure out what he's going to do based on his behavior earlier in the race.
You're saying Jack should retire now? He's 1-0 versus DJ. Okay, got it. I'll let him know.
So when you're sizing up a driver like that you have not competed with before, do you just sort of sit back and make observations, or do you make moves for them to react to? Or are you being proactive in trying to gather that data? What's your approach to approach somebody you haven't directly competed with before?
Well, so throughout the duration of the race, I can pay attention to how he's interacting with other drivers. You can kind of get like a gauge for their decision making. For instance, some drivers do the absolute right thing by the book all the time. And I love racing against those drivers because you throw something a little wild at them and they don't really know what to do with it. But Jack, Michael, and John were just a really good blend of unpredictability, but also like really good decision making. And that always just makes it just a ton of fun. But something I can do on my own end is you can poke and prod them and try to get a gauge for what they're going to do. And something else you can do, and this comes from the days where I would play fighting games competitively. You can kind of act the entire race like you're like, this is where I'm going to get you. Like, this is my behavior. And then when it really matters, like last lap, second to last lap, you can do something completely the opposite of that and it'll catch them off guard.
So would you say that the translation from racing sims to real racing is more or less realistic than from fighting games to actual fighting?
Well, you know what? Besides some brawls in middle school, I've never really been in a fight before, so I can't really answer that.
So you've never actually pulled someone's spine out, is what you're saying? Yeah.
No, I've never done that. I'm 5'7" and 150 pounds at this age. And in high school, I was like 130 pounds, so I wasn't really fighting anybody.
All right, I think with that, thank you.
Yeah, might be a good stopping point.
What's that one time? No, I'm just kidding, guys.
You can't top that question. That's a great one.
No.
All right, so thank you, DJ. A great finish tonight. Looking forward to the rest of the season because it sounds like it's only going to keep getting better as we go further. So definitely looking forward to that, and good luck at Gingerman this weekend as well.
All right, thanks, guys. It's going to be great.
All right, so that's it's going to wrap up round two, and JG, I think we can pull off the rookie stripes. That was a lot of fun when you're asking somebody for real life fighting is better than sim fighting, I think you're past.
That's what happens when you have an actual journalist in the booth here, guys. So I appreciate it. Yeah, no, it was an absolute honor hanging out with you guys. I think I'll probably be sort of alternating here this year and racing one week and announcing the next. So see you back here in a couple weeks and see you on track next week.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Absolutely, and appreciate it. This is a lot of fun tonight. Thanks for joining us. And Greg, as always, it's been awesome. I think this is a great night. Looking forward to next week. We're going to be at Lime Rock.
Yeah, beautiful 1.6 mile Lime Rock, and that should be interesting. Watching some passes in that little bull ring.
Yeah.
So we have a track that's almost a little more than half as long as this track, and you saw the level of traffic this week, and to put what's going to be probably 55 cars on that track next week, it's going to be exciting.
It will be. So if you're watching this on Facebook or on the YouTube stream, definitely put it on your calendars right now for 9 p.m. Eastern next Thursday night. It will definitely be a must-see broadcast. So for Greg Ginsburg, JG Pasternak, the folks at SimTV, Kyle Heyer, Finney and DeCuna, and of course all the folks at the SCCA office working behind the scenes, thanks, and we will see you all next week from Lime Rock.